We got back from our Christmas vacation and the garden has exploded with so much growth. These tomatoes right behind me, they are cherry tomatoes and they are literally growing upwards above the fence right now, which at some point very soon I am going to have to cut them. But before we do that, it is time for our January garden tour. Let's go. Alright, so you can see that the first thing up here are my tomatoes. Now this is actually our fence for our backyard. The trellis is just at that same height, and so these are definitely growing above that. And in the past, I want to say the past 2 weeks or so, I've had to tie these up several times. I use these like little Velcro tomato tie things here, which is great because I can reuse them, and they just kind of like wrap around the fence and they're Velcro onto themselves. But I mean, these have completely exploded with new growth. They have tons of little flowers. I did see some tomatoes in here somewhere. I can't find them because they're green, but I know exactly where the other ones are on the other plants, and I will show you those. But these ones, I mean, they have had so much new green growth. I've actually also taken some of the shoots off of them. I don't tend to prune my tomatoes too much. I do take out some of the suckers, but like usually if I notice them when they're like that big, and then I'll take them out. If not, then I mean, I kind of just let them grow wild. I'm definitely guilty of that, but I mean, like something like this right here, I'll probably take that out just because it doesn't have any flowers on it. And you can definitely take that and put it in water and regrow this, and it'll turn into a whole brand new tomato plant because this is an indeterminate tomato variety. I don't recommend pruning too much if they already have flowers on them, because of course you are going to limit the amount of fruit that you're getting on them. But then again, if you don't want them as crazy as this, then you might want to prune a little bit more. Right underneath that are my mustard greens. So this is, I think it's red, Japanese red mustard, something like that. I have used this quite a bit in salads, but of course I have also let quite a few of them. I mean, this is like bigger than the size of my hand actually. And I actually really love this, and so do a lot of other things. So this is probably what's getting eaten the most right now from the garden. I haven't had, knock on wood over here, I haven't had too many other pests in the garden this season, thankfully, because I've taken some preventative measures, but this is kind of getting a little bit eaten up, which is fine because we definitely have plenty to share. I don't even use this amount, but I will be taking this and blanching it in the future just so I can actually preserve it, because that is one of my 2020 goals, to be able to preserve things. Right next to it is my lemon basil, which is actually not doing so well. You can see it's gotten like a lot of this, I don't know, it's browning on it. That might be from the fertilizer, because I did put in a slow, I think it's slow release fertilizer, and you can still see it is trying to bolt because the temperature is kind of warming up now. So I'll just take those and drop them where they are. But this also might be from cold, because it did get into like the 40s here a day or two, and then it came back up to the 80s, so go figure. The parsley that I have had scattered in here growing like weeds is doing really well. I did plant it like kind of right underneath the tomatoes, so I usually don't cut from this parsley. I usually cut from that parsley over there because there's tons of it. My little carrots here are doing pretty well. Again, it's been pretty warm. It did drop for a couple of days, and then it got pretty warm, and Milo's over here wandering around. But I'm hoping that maybe if it does get a little cooler, then these carrots will do well. I am not holding my breath, and I did kind of, wherever these beans were, I planted those out, and some of the squash that I had originally had. My chamomile, the same thing. It is doing pretty well. It's getting some of this like yellowing and browning on it. I'm not exactly sure what that's from. I've never actually grown chamomile before, but we shall see if it actually grows and, you know, turns into a flower. And then, like I said, my sea of parsley over here is doing extraordinarily well. I definitely didn't think it was going to turn out to be this much parsley, because I kind of scattered the seeds wherever, and I didn't plant as many parsley seeds as I have in the past. In the past, I've planted like several packets in this one space, or in kind of this amount of space, and I let them kind of just do their thing. I have been just harvesting like entire handfuls of it. Like I'll take a handful like that and cut it right here with the scissors. I mean, this parsley is getting massive because it does have more space than I have given it in the past, and it's actually like coming out of the beds, you can see. Don't mind all the weeds and stuff also, but this is just kind of like spewing over the sides of the bed. And I have taken some of this and given it to my fiance's mom yesterday, several times in the past week or so, and I've used this in cooking, and I've actually cut this to do like somewhat of like a sauce with it. So this is like the leftovers of what's here after I've been cutting it so much this week, and you can see it is just still tons and tons of parsley. The same thing with the arugula. I will say I have not been using the arugula nearly as much, which is why these are like ridiculously long for arugula. I prefer baby arugula, and if you don't use it, then it does tend to get a little bit bitter by the time that it gets to this stage. I did cut some of it for the chickens, but I am going to be harvesting it for the chickens, sure, but I'm also going to be using it, like blanching it and freezing it so that I can actually put it in like soups and stuff. I want to be able to start preserving some of my greens because I do have my arugula over here. I have my mustard that I showed you guys, and then I have some more greens over there, and we have so many greens. Like this is just 4 square feet. Like I promise you guys, this is 2 square feet across, and that bed is 2 square feet. And it's really a lot, right? Like we do not use this much arugula, but you know, I want to be able to preserve it for later use. And we have some Roma tomatoes here. You can see our flowers coming in, but we also have our first baby tomatoes. I'm so excited. I mean, they're getting bigger. We came back from our vacation, and we actually don't have too many pests on these plants. So tons of little flowers. It is kind of coming off of the fence. Usually my Roma tomatoes, I'll do it where I have like posts, and I'll do the Florida weave. If you're not familiar with that, I'll insert a clip here. But usually I do the Florida weave on these type of tomatoes because they kind of sprawl out a little bit more, kind of like using a tomato cage with them. But this is the first time I'm trellising them on the fence. It seems to be okay for now. Definitely not the preferred way of growing Roma tomatoes because it has like stalks that are shooting out, and these will eventually turn into tomatoes, and those will actually get really heavy on the vine. And so what I'm gonna have to do is take some sort of twine and support this branch from over here somewhere, which is fine because you know, you work with the space you have. And then I have my scallions. These are the ones that I said I'm gonna let go seed if possible. I want to see the flowers come out, and I want to be able to seed save, so I have not been cutting these. I have another pot of these in the front of the house, which I've been cutting for like actual culinary use. And then we have some of our radishes here. Now the radishes, like I said earlier, they've been kind of like on and off. You can see here that I am actually getting a few radishes. It is splitting because it hasn't really been consistent on the watering. The actual like drip irrigation system, or the sprinkler system that I have put in, it wasn't doing its thing for a couple days, so that's probably the cause of the splitting. But even then, like you can see, this is basil, this is for warm weather, and you have radishes for cool weather, and they kind of both don't know what to do right now. I have a few radishes. This one is getting pretty big also over here. Oops, if you can see it. So that one is getting pretty big. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and take that out. Okay, so I'll take these two out. I don't have too many other ones that are actually getting bigger and actually forming bulbs. A lot of them still look like this, where it's like these little stringy type of plants. They look more like little, you know, little stringy things. I'm not sure what you would call it, but we have a few that actually did what they were supposed to do. And then I do see a few over here that are starting to form little bulbs. So hopefully they'll actually do something. But if not, then I'll just take them out and use the space for something else. This is also a Roma tomato plant. I think there's 2 Roma tomato plants total. So yeah, this is one plant in there, and you can see it is doing really, really well. I'm just waiting for these tons of flowers, and they already have some little flowers, and tomatoes on them as well. So I can never get over how pretty tomato flowers are. I love looking at tomato flowers, and so then every time I just come in here and tap them just to give them a little bit of extra pollination. Next to that, we have our Swiss chard, which I'm surprised has been actually doing pretty well. I didn't think that this was going to make it all throughout the season because at first there was something eating it a little bit, and then, I mean, it wasn't looking super hot, but I mean, so far so good. We've been using it tons for salad, kind of just coming over outside of the box now as well. And then my kale. And my kale finally is growing like it's supposed to, and so far nothing has been touching it, which I'm really thankful for, because in the past I've had a lot of issues with aphids and caterpillars and cutworms and all that stuff. So kale is doing really well. I am going to be cutting these out, not the whole plants, but just harvesting them along with the mustard greens and using them to blanch them and for salads, and you know, just kind of trying to preserve them a little bit more than I have in the past. Right next to them, right, they kind of blend in, so that's my kale and my Swiss chard. These here are my bush beans. I think there's some still on here. I mean, you can see, like, since it has been getting pretty warm, we have a ton of little flowers. I came back from vacation, or we came back from vacation, and I harvested a ton of these. I mean, there is so many of these in the fridge, or actually in the freezer now, but you can see we are getting tons of them still, and they're getting pretty big, actually. We harvest these at least once a week, if not more. It just depends. So like you can see here, there's tons and tons on these plants. So we have about, I want to say it's 5, almost 6 square feet of these planted out. They are until the end of the bed there. I have here some more parsley, just kind of like wherever the tomatoes were. I put parsley, and I don't really use this, so it is getting kind of big. And this was a poor little tomato transplant. I actually, out of the tomato, the indeterminate tomato ones that I have over there that I showed you guys are growing above the fence, I took out an entire branch, and I didn't want to just throw it away, and I didn't want to like just waste the space on my potting bench to use for actually putting this in water so it grew roots. So instead of doing that, I just kind of stuck it in the ground, and this doesn't look too hot. This here actually looks amazing, so I'm hoping that maybe it started to grow roots and it's just picking back up. I have no idea, but I did plant it and water it in right there, so hopefully this will actually take. I've done this before and it has actually really good results, so we'll see if maybe it perks up. If it dies, then I'll just kind of rip it up and like mulch it, or you know, use it there as mulch or whatever. The ones next to it, so these are actually different varieties than that one, because that one came off the other plant, which these ones are bumblebee tomatoes, and these are the ones that actually have tomatoes on them. Oh, here we go. So these ones have a whole bunch of little green tomatoes, and I cannot wait to try these. And they also have tons and tons of flowers on them. I mean, there's flower clusters everywhere, plus like a whole bunch of new growth. Now these ones are not as tall. They're not getting above the fence yet, but they're almost there. I've also had to trellis these ones up several times in the past couple weeks. Not nearly as much as the other ones, but still. Alright, so over to the potting bench. Give you guys an update on what's going on here. Now, my favorite update to give you guys is that my chaya seedlings, or not seedlings, my chaya cuttings, there we go. If this would focus here, my chaya cuttings actually have leaves on them. There is an actual legitimate leaf on these plants. This one is a tiny bit slower, but still they are actually growing their roots. I'm not really sure what this stuff is. I think it's like sap from what I can tell, and it's kind of like on my finger now. But I think it's just like leaking sap. I'm not really familiar, but that means that these cuttings, oh, and you can see some green here too, these cuttings actually made it, and they will grow into chaya, which means that I got them for free at the nursery, just by asking if they had anything, and she didn't have anything. So, well, she only had one plant. That was her personal plant, so she shared with me, and I don't have to buy chaya cuttings. These will go into the food forest when they're ready. I will separate them, take them into the food forest. Now I still have tons of snake plants here, which I'm thinking about relocating them and finding a new home for them, because as I continue to propagate these out, they're just taking up a bit of space. I have a few in the front of the house as well. My aloe vera plant doesn't really see too much use. I don't use it as much as I would have wanted to. I honestly just forget it's there, and I have another one over on the table over there. Mainly my fiance's daughter cuts limbs off this and uses it as pretend snot to blow her nose and then annoy her sister with. So mainly that's the use that we get out of that. In here I do have basil growing, and I'm just gonna let it grow until, you know, the temperature kills it or whatever, just because my other basil is not doing so hot and I don't think the snake plant is really being affected by it. And then I have my rosemary cuttings, which I took off my plant, and I did see that they're actually starting to grow some roots, which I'm very excited about because I really want to be able to propagate these out, either for maybe some favors, like little rosemary seedlings for the wedding, which I haven't mentioned to Alan yet, or maybe around the house as landscaping for the dream house. And hopefully by the time that we get to the dream house, these will grow nice and big, and maybe even be able to put some of these in the food forest. That would be amazing. The lemon basil here, the same thing as the other one. I think the frost, or not really frost, but the cold weather didn't really do too well. These are just, that's actually trash. I have to throw that away. And then little rosemaries that didn't really root and didn't really make it. So these are just extra seed, extra potting soil that I'm going to reuse when I have seeds to start. Milo, what are you doing? Are you okay? Oh my god. And then a little poinciana from Christmas that was inside. Now this is not mine. I usually don't buy potted plants like this. This was actually a family member of mine who had this and just set it down there, so it's not really bothering me right now, but at some point in time I will be putting that in compost. So that is the whole potting bench at this moment. Alright, and then the last thing that is actually, I don't know if you can see this, it's kind of dark in here now. The last thing that I want to share with you guys is my vermicompost bin. Now I got this for Christmas, just like I had asked for. It's still like in the packaging and everything. I will be setting that up in an upcoming video and ordering my worms. Alright, so I am very excited with my 2 radishes. I did not think that these are going to grow. We came back from our Christmas break and we actually have a few radishes, so not too bad. I don't think that I have enough of these to actually use them in any way, and I don't see the point in saving them because I'm not going to get a whole bunch more of them anytime soon. So I'll probably just wash these off and use them as a snack. This will either go in compost or to the chickens. I have cooked these before. You can definitely eat these. Isn't my favorite taste, and Alan refuses to eat them anymore, so I think we probably won't be saving those. But definitely, I mean, the garden this month, between the weather being cold and hot and all the other stuff, I'm actually really surprised at the amount of growth that we have, which just goes to show you that nature is funny and always, you know, figures it out. The garden has exploded this month. Now the last thing that I'm going to share is that we're going to be amping up production for the food forest, which isn't something that we had planned on so early. It's definitely on our 2022 goals, as I shared in my last video, but we are going to start with food forest a lot sooner and just find ways to protect it from the deer, and that's going to be in our upcoming videos. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more future gardening videos, all of that stuff, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.